I literally cried at every book that I read this month. There is a plot twist right near the end of this book that is so good that it honestly moved this up from maybe a 3.5 star book to a 5-star book. I just had this reminder, I think, this month of the purpose of books in my life and the power of stories. Classic love story begins. Hello everyone and welcome to my April reading wrap up where I share with you all of my thoughts on the books that I read in the month of April. Now before I begin, I feel like I need to intro this video a little bit with some disclaimers. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I think it's a helpful spoiler. I rated every book 5 stars this month, which never happens. A 5-star read, in my opinion, is a book that I could not put down. A book that I was thinking about even when I wasn't reading it, a book that I've thought about since I've finished it, a book that I want to reread, and just one that completely engrossed me and captured me into that story. And every book that I read this month fit into that category completely. I loved every single book that I read. I just had this reminder, I think, this month of the purpose of books in my life and the power of stories, the power that they have to allow us to escape to new worlds, to get outside of our own head just for a minute and to see the world from somebody else's perspective is such a, I don't know, a kind of therapeutic, I guess, experience. So I'm gonna just get straight onto the first book now. But just know that every book that's coming up in this video is one that I absolutely loved and would 100% recommend. So the first book that I finished this month was Frenchman's Creek by Daphne du Maurier. This is my first Daphne du Maurier book. I've not read anything else by her. I feel like most people start with Rebecca, but I just really wanted to read pure escapism when I picked up this book. So this book follows Donna, and she is married, she has children, and she lives in quite a high position in society in London at the start of the book. However, she is just really dissatisfied with life. She feels like she just needs adventure, she needs escape, and she just can't have it. She feels so constrained. And she is just desperate to discover herself and learn who she truly is when all of that has been suppressed in her. And so she decides to go with her children to one of her husband's houses in Cornwall. And when she gets there, she learns from all the locals that they've been having trouble with pirates, and particularly this French pirate who apparently treats all the women really badly, pillages all the houses, and is just a big nuisance, and they want to capture this pirate. One day Donna is exploring her new surroundings, and who does she come into contact with but the French pirate? And so begins this wonderfully fun and witty and romantic pirate adventure story. I think what Daphne du Maurier does really well is that she really convinces you that even though the things these characters are doing are perhaps not the best idea in the grand scheme of things, she convinces you that what they are doing is so in character and you really understand why they're doing what they're doing. It doesn't feel like it's escapism for the sake of it. It feels like there's also a commentary running underneath it, and you really understand and love these characters. I just really enjoyed it. It's also set in Cornwall, so it was really fun to read a book set where I live, and the romantic plotline was beautiful. The writing is so gorgeous. I love her writing style, which is the main thing really from this book that makes me want to read more of her books very soon. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be picking up another one of her novels next month. So the second book that I read this month was A Pale View of Hills by Kazuo Ishiguro, which was the penultimate book from Kazuo Ishiguro that I need to have read before I've read all of his novels. And this was a very different book to Frenchman's Creek for sure. The story follows a Japanese woman named Etsuko, and she is currently living in England. And at the start of the story, we learn that one of her daughters has committed suicide. Etsuko has two daughters, one from a Japanese husband and another from a British man. And so the daughter that committed suicide was her first daughter from a Japanese husband. And early in the story, her second daughter comes to visit her, and it kind of evokes all of these memories for the main character. And right from the beginning, she kind of makes it clear that her memory isn't in the best place, that she's not really remembering things perhaps quite as they were, but still she sort of wants to take the reader on a bit of a journey of what brought her to this place, while she tries to kind of unpack the traumatic thing that has happened to her daughter. And so she recounts the story of her life in Japan, and particularly a friendship that she had with a Japanese woman there. Her friend is quite a neglectful mother. She sort of doesn't send her child to school, I don't think. She lets her run around in, I don't know, random places and isn't bothered about finding where she is. The daughter is clearly going through some trauma, and the mother is just kind of ignoring it and saying, oh, she's just a child, she'll get over it. And so we kind of have this memory of a woman who has lost her daughter, remembering her friend who has maybe not treated her daughter very well. I kind of enjoyed this book from the beginning, but I didn't love it. I found it quite slow, and at times it felt like I didn't quite know what the point of the story was. It just felt like we were kind of meandering around this memory, and Kazuo Ishiguro does that a lot in his novels, but in this one it felt a little bit random and a little bit directionless. However, there is a plot twist right near the end of this book that is so good that honestly moved this up from maybe a 3.5 star book to a 5-star book. Oh, the plot twist at the end is the best plot twist I've honestly ever read, and it made this book so interesting. It was also Kazuo Ishiguro's first published novel, so it was interesting to kind of read where he began with his writing. So I really enjoyed this one, and I'm very excited to hopefully finish all of his novels by the end of next month. The next book that I read was also quite a sad one, and that was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. So this story follows our main character, Lily Bloom, and she hasn't had the best of starts in life. Her family upbringing was a little bit tumultuous, and at the start of this story she meets a neurosurgeon guy on a rooftop that she's randomly on. I didn't understand the beginning very much, but anyway, she meets this neurosurgeon guy, she falls for him, he falls for her. Classic love story begins. The story flips between her present tense relationship with this guy and also diary entries from her childhood with a boy who's sort of squatting in one of the houses nearby, who she kind of takes in and looks after. Not too far into the book, this boy that she had written all these diary entries about actually appears in her life, and she had thought that was a closed door, closed chapter in her life. But when he comes back into her life, she it kind of upends everything for her. This book touches on a very heavy theme of domestic abuse, and it does so with such a very kind of gentle hand, in that it shows the reader not just the harshness of domestic abuse in relationships, but also the hardships of leaving that person when you are so in love with them. It's just a heartbreaking book. I sobbed and sobbed at the end of this book. Oh, there's just a line at the end of the book. I don't want to say what it is or what's happening around it, but it just hit me so hard. And I just sobbed so much. But yeah, this was a really good book. And I think it's the first Colleen Hoover book that I've given a 5 stars to. So yeah, really, really loved it. And I know there's a sequel coming out as well soon. So I'm really, really excited to read that one. And the final book that I read this month was this big, beefy book, The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, which is the 3rd and final book in the Daphne trilogy. I think this might be one of the best fantasy, at least adult fantasy series that I've ever read and completed. Every single book in this series was gripping, had so many plot twists that I did not see coming, and pulled on my heartstrings so much. The Daphne trilogy follows three main characters actually. Nari, who is a kind of con artist in Cairo. Ali, who is a prince in the land of the Jinn. And also Dara, who is one of the kind of enslaved Jinn. This author is just incredible at really making you feel like these people are real, and I loved them so much. You're so invested in their lives and in what they do, that by the time that this final book comes, I was just so invested. In this particular book, we pick up straight after the events of book 2, which was kind of interesting because the first and second book have about a 5-year gap between them. So I was kind of expecting something similar to happen in between the second and third book, but we actually pick up straight after the finale of book 2. We kind of deal with the aftermath of some very painful decisions that were made, and some very bad decisions that were made at the end of book 2, and how the characters kind of pick up the pieces after that and fight for what's right. This whole series covers a lot of themes around doing what is right even if the people you love are not, particularly family, and what happens when you don't agree with what your family believe, and kind of just standing for what is right in the face of a lot of hate and a lot of difficulty. So this book was big, like it was a big book, and the first 2 books in the series were very slow. Like the first part would be really, really slow, and then all the action would happen in the last 50 pages. Whereas this book, I don't know, the pacing just changed, and it was action-packed the whole way through, which gripped me so much. But also by the end of the book, I felt kind of exhausted. Not in a bad way, like I loved the book, but it definitely left me feeling quite emotionally drained afterwards, because there's just so much that happens, so much intense action, so many battle scenes, so many new parts of the world and characters that are just suddenly introduced, but it never feels overwhelming or pointless. Every scene and every event that happens feels like it has a big impact on the characters and the overall story, which I really, really loved. And yeah, I just thought this was an amazing conclusion to a really fantastic fantasy series, and I'm very excited to read more books by this author if she comes out with some more because yeah, this was just incredible. And that is everything that I read in the month of April. I almost finished one more book, but after reading 4 5-star reads, I then picked up a book and ruined my streak. And the current book that I'm reading, I'm just feeling a little bit meh about. And so I've been reading that for the last couple of weeks, and it's kind of slowed down my reading, and I just couldn't finish it quite in time for the end of the month. So I almost finished 5 books, but I'm very happy with the 4 that I read. I hope that you enjoyed hearing my thoughts about them. Please let me know if you've read any of these books down in the comments, and also if you read any 5-star reads this month. I would love to hear your recommendations. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful month of reading in May.